Say, here, say hi. You want to say hi to everybody? Lord Jesus Christ. Say hello. All right. Okay. You stay.
All right. What's going on, y'all? Got another episode of RRX Exchange Podcast. My name is Frank, and can I get my co-host to introduce herself?
Hey, this is Nat. And
All right.
Lola.
Yeah, we got Lola who's gonna join us on the episode today. Sporadically and intrusively. But so for this episode, there was an article that I looked up, and I came across the article, and I thought it was pretty interesting when it came down to the several reasons that they highlight in the article. But essentially, the name of the article is called "Ways Single Mothers Destroy Their Sons." Ways single mothers destroy their sons. Um, One of the biggest things, more so, and the article comes from, and we'll put the link in the description when it comes out to the video. But the article comes from this website called AfricanAmerica.org. Okay, and I was introduced to the website, and then was introduced to the article through the website, and one of the things that I kind of realized is often there's a back and forth on the dynamic of the relationship between the single mother and her son or sons, as far as if it is a good dynamic, or if it when it comes down to that dynamic, inevitably that dynamic exists in reference to the father not being there. Now mind you, there can be several reasons why the father's not there. It could be based on the father not wanting to be there, because we know that exists. But also in turn, another reason, which could be within a slew of reasons, is the mother doesn't want the father to be there. In addition to other examples of the reasons why the father's not there, in reference to maybe potentially the father is in prison. Maybe the father is going through certain things in reference to maybe drug usage, or it could be the complete opposite of that. The father wants to be there, but when it came down to the demise of the relationship between the mother and the father's not there for whatever reasons that could surface in reference to the father not being there. But one thing that I thought was pretty interesting about this article is when it came down to me kind of reading over the comments in reference to the article, where the article, and just being real about it, a lot of articles, obviously articles are written by a particular author, and oftentimes that author is talking about one side, one side. Um, a lot of times when it comes down to that one side, oftentimes most people will not think too much, in on, just looking at the one side and being able to understand it from that one side, where they may take the article as, a blaming piece, when it comes down to, gender, specifics, as far as, talking specifically about, men in particular, as far as, one of the things, or, quite a few things that men will do, compared to another article that will highlight certain things that women will do, or in this case single mothers will do, right? And it's interesting to see the several examples, and some of the examples that I can definitely say I do believe is true. Some of them, I would say, when it comes down to details, is really dependent upon uh the dynamic of the relationship, you know, between said mother and said son, or sons, plural. Nevertheless, let's kind of, go ahead and start, get into the article. And I'll go ahead and kind of read the first part in addition to the first example. in reference to ways single mothers, destroy their sons, which is a very strong word, but, that's what the article says. So, when single mothers destroy their sons, the most toxic environment for a boy growing up is a single mother household. I can tell readers from personal experience that boys don't get all their needs met in a single parent household. Many of the lessons they learn in that hostile territory growing up make them into lost, confused men with no defined sense of identity. How does a single mother destroy her son? Let me count the ways. And then it goes into the first example, which is speaking negatively about their father. Okay. And then it says the most damaging thing a mother can do is speak badly about a child's father in front of them. These negative statements about the child's father are the equivalent of hitting that child with a fist in the jaw. One half of that child is the father, and when he hears his mother saying negative things about him, he usually the boy grows up doubting himself. They think that there's something wrong with them, that they need to change a part of themselves to get approval of his angry mother. It's these identity issues usually cause him it's these identity issues usually cause him to resolve to not be like his father. It's these identity issues that cause a boy to hate himself. Okay. So for the first part, in addition to the first example, right? I think, there is, some truth to that. There is some truth to that because, in my personal opinion, and this is something that I've actually had a conversation with my own mother about, um, where for me, in reference to speaking negatively, about, my father, what may have you, I think at times, in the scope of a woman delving too much into her emotions at a moment in time in reference to something that she doesn't approve of that the father may have done or things that have happened in the past in reference to the father, one of the things that may happen is the mother will speak negatively about the father in front of the son, which psychologically that mother may not understand what she is doing in that moment that could push the son to have a negative perception of his father, in addition to that those negative things that are being said about the father, you know, that son may not want to, do those things, or in reference to what is being said, it's being said from a place of anger and hurt and pain versus a place from, exact detail of things that are within the scope of disapproval. Okay. Where not, every, single mother will do this. However, oftentimes, this dynamic is not necessarily spoken on in detail in reference to, mothers around their son speaking negatively about the father. What you think, Nat?
I agree with the first point. I don't think that it's forethought, especially when they're speaking negatively about their fathers. Because I mean, I agree, it is in hurt and pain, and based on whatever happened between her and the father, especially to cause the breakup, right? Or
Mm,
um, and so that is being said in front of the child or around the child, where the child can hear it. And children soak up information like a sponge, honestly, even at a young age. And so if they're so, even if they don't understand fully what you're talking about, I think that sometimes parents don't realize that the child does understand more than what you probably really think they do. Um, they really do. I mean, I don't have kids, but I have nieces, I have nephews. I used to teach third and fourth grade um, math, English, and writing for a summer enrichment program. And kids really soak up information like a sponge. And so depending on what information you're putting out and you're telling them and you're giving them, that's kind of that's what they have to go off of, that's what they're gonna sort of take in. So she's going on and on about what happened in the relationship with her and, the child's father. Of course, now he knows. Now he's aware of what happened. He's not only aware of what happened, but he's aware of things that happened that probably don't necessarily pertain to his relationship that he should have with his father. So I agree with that statement. I mean, I agree with that speaking. I don't think that you should do that in front of the kids, but the mothers aren't thinking about that at that time. They're thinking about, oh, he did me wrong, or he's not right, or whatever have you. So I'm going to tell you about this. When in actuality, you should not. I don't think that you should be having that conversation or talking about that in front of the child.
Or it could it doesn't necessarily have to be in the scope of talking about in detail what happened between the two of them, and then speaking negatively about that experience. But it could also just be completely insulting, you know the father, negatively, with potentially using profanity, you know potentially uh saying certain things that are psychologically damaging, to the son, where the reiteration of that will push that son to have this sense of, because it could, either one of two things can happen. The son will completely have complete disrespect for the father because the mother doesn't respect the father, or the son doesn't want to depict an image of what now he is in consistent basis is being shared to him in reference to the father, which is only one-sided. you know because I mean, obviously he doesn't know all the details, or for that matter, because let's be real about it, children first more so learn from example. They don't first learn in detail from what is being said word wise. They learn from example, being able to see. They end up more so using all their senses before they develop a strong vocabulary. You know, where once they over years end up developing that vocabulary, those words now become more associated with different actions, that can take place. If a child is not understanding of a particular word, they're not going to be thinking about the details of, well, what does this word mean in context? What they're going to be looking at and understanding is how someone is behaving, what they are being shown, in addition to how they can feel or be able to empathize with what is going on with mom, especially if mom is the only example, or, or only, excuse me, or only side that child is being given, which essentially will go to either the child not ever wanting to be like the father, because the child is now only getting one side or a false sense of what the father is, you know or the child developing a certain maybe hatred for the father, that the child may want to act out. Or the flip side could happen. Now, because consistently, the mother is talking negatively about the father, the child may have a certain hatred for the mother, depending on the relationship, or, at minimum, what the child does have with the father. Where if mom is consistently speaking negatively about the father, it can develop a certain hatred for the mother in reference to, why are you talking about my father like that? But then we will also have to ask the details on how the father is interacting with the son, if that is the case. Because it's fairly easy for a child to only get one side, and that one side becomes more prominent within that child, which doesn't establish a sense of understanding the other half of the child's self. and they're more so being concentrated within the only side that they're interacting with on a daily basis, which is the mother's emotionalism. You know, but you wanna read the second example?
Yeah, sure. So the second example is saying negative things about men. Thanks to their failed relationship with the child's father, many single mothers have a subconscious hatred of men. And they express that hatred about every man they come in contact with, saying things like, that no good nigga, or men ain't shit, or doing things like avoiding male cashiers, salesmen, and speaking negatively about male acquaintances have a profound impact on children, especially boys. Hearing these negative statements and seeing these, what is
Misandristic. Misandristic.
this?
I got you.
I'm
I
sorry,
got you.
y'all.
I got you
I
now.
have to take a second look, you guys.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Misandristic.
Misandristic actions about men and regarding men make little boys afraid of embracing their masculinity and their male identity. One of the easiest ways to turn a boy into a mangina is to have him constantly hear numerous negative statements about men from his mother. When a boy hears that his mother hates men, he resolves to not be like them, which is simply self hatred.
Well, here, and I'm gonna just say one thing, but I want you to give your example on it. Here's one thing that I don't like about in context what is being said in this article is they're using an insult, within the article. The whole mangina, insult. Even though
Yeah.
realistically it is an insult that will be said when it comes down to a man that is overly emotional, you know, and overly emotional in the scope of exuding certain behaviors that would show they're acting like a woman who's overly emotional, you know,
Yeah.
where that term, that insult will be said, you know. But what's your take on this one? You agree, disagree, indifferent?
I think I am, and I had to take a second to look at the word, y'all, because I have to look at that word, misandristic, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correct.
Do you
But
know you know what it means, right?
it's not giving me a clear definition. I would just look
I
up
I
the
I,
definition.
I can tell you what it means.
It's not giving me a clear definition.
So you have misogyny, which is hatred of women,
Oh,
and then
okay,
you
yeah,
have
okay,
misandry, which is hatred of men, right? Most
yeah,
cases, a lot of people will say when it comes down to misogynist, most men are misogynists naturally, which I don't necessarily believe that. But then you also have the dynamic of saying that feminists, all modern feminists actually are misandrists, or
yeah.
have misandristic nature. When it comes down to their hatred of men, which I don't agree with. I don't agree with it all being all modern feminists. I don't agree with it being feminists when it came down to the first wave of feminism. You know what I'm saying? It's really dependent upon the individual's behavior, how they are acting specifically. But oftentimes, the double standard when it comes down to you know modern society is the word misogyny is automatically thrown out there when it comes down to a man, because it's a means to kind of deflect from maybe certain misandry that a woman may be exuding that she may not necessarily be aware of that she is, you know but what's your take?
I don't think I have a take on this one. I mean, I think I tied this one almost hand in hand with the first one, with the exception of the first one is specifically talking about the father, about the child's father,
Hmm.
versus the other one is specifically talking. I mean, well, talking about men and just in general.
Right.
Um, and that one may actually be more dangerous than the other one, actually, because Lola, I'm sorry, give me one moment.
Okay. Um. So I I would say, uh, baseline. I think the second one is a more toxic form of the first one. You know, because the first one, the hatred and anger is
Right.
directly directed to one person. The second one, the hatred and anger is now directed to a whole gender.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Where I think the second
Yeah.
one is definitely more dangerous. I will agree with you on that. It's definitely more dangerous
Yeah.
because now your
There's no
movements,
target. There's no specific target.
there's no specific target. All of your movements now, when it comes down to maneuvering in life, and your son seeing that from you, is a reflection of your hatred of men, which now poses a confusion within the son on the reason why you're acting that way, which will push your son to act a certain way in ways that you wouldn't be able to predict. You know, where
One thing I okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Sorry, I had to separate my. I have a lizard and a dog. They were about to. I don't know what times I had to go and take them to that. Um, I don't. As a woman, no, I don't have any kids. But I'm still a woman. I can still bear children. And I think that the comment, I mean, when he said, when he or she, I'm not sure who the author who says, but where they say in here, about women avoiding doing things such as avoiding male cashiers, salesmen, things like that. I don't see I don't see women doing that. And again, I could be totally wrong. I don't. There would. What's the reason for me to avoid a male salesperson or cashier or male? It just. I don't know. I find that kind of like. I find that I feel like that came from personal experience, not really talking about the masses. I feel like that's something that this author may have experienced, and that's how they feel about it, not really talking about it. And that's how I feel about some. I have read through this article, and I feel like there are some points made in it where I feel like it's coming from personal experience, and then some of it is coming from, how we should look at it like as a whole. But and I think that's probably one of them because I'm trying to find a reason why, if I were in that situation, why I would feel the need to avoid certain. Now, I can understand why women have their preference, in doctors, right? Like why I would pick a female GYN over a male GYN.
Right.
But and then some women prefer men over women. But in this case, I just don't. I don't see
I
if it made that much of an impact. Then whew, then you got your work
here
cut
here's
out for you.
here's my thing. No gender can completely avoid another gender. And I agree with you when with me
That's
saying
what I'm
that.
trying to do too.
I agree with you in the scope of, potentially the detail in this example, could be, specific to whoever wrote it or specific to, someone or a few individuals. But I will say, the scope of women avoiding men for various reasons exists. Okay, where
Yeah.
men or women will avoid men more so. And, correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I do think it is this, because, not only have I been told this by other women, but it also has happened to me. More so, I believe you have a lot of women that would avoid men in the scope of women thinking that most men are just trying to get
Yeah.
in their
No,
drawers.
yeah, I get
You know
it.
what I'm saying?
I just want
And
to get to the sweet spot,
yeah,
whatever
they're
you
just
call
more so, trying to get in their drawers or what may have you, where it in that woman it develops a certain level of, preservation when it comes down to not even putting yourself in a situation where you're interacting with a man that you see as a stranger that potentially could be a danger to you, especially when you are not with someone that you believe should be protecting you in the sense of, one of the duties that, comes with being a man. You know, if you have a mindset, if that woman has a mindset of, well, men are protectors, protectors and providers. Let's put it in that perspective, right? And that woman doesn't have a man, then she, in her mind, believes no one is protecting her but herself. So now she has to use and I would call it a passive aggressive nature to avoid men, period, because she doesn't want to be in a situation where potentially a man is only looking at her from a means of sexual gratification.
No, I get that, and I think I was gonna touch on that
Mm-hmm.
something on one of the other points. But yeah, no, I agree with that. But I would even extend that to say, well, yeah, extend that to say that not only is she being that, she also has to protect her and her child. You see what I'm saying?
True.
So it's kind of like, why should I give you the opportunity? I've already given out enough opportunities. Like that's how some women think, right? I've already given this person the benefit of the doubt. I've already, let my walls down, or my walls were down, right? Let's just
Mm-hmm.
say I was a virgin in the sense of, I had no walls up. I let people in, or I let men in, and look what happened. Now I have this son. He's not here for whatever reason. So now I have to be more selective. I have to be more selective. I have to be more cautious, and I have to build this wall. And the funny thing is that I don't think that men realize that. And this is something that I kind of ding dong in my head because I've heard, and I am now, in the whole scene of meeting people, which I have not met in quite some time, and it's just it's a mess out there. But it's a mess. I'm just saying this,
It's a mess.
and we can touch on that later, but it's very
Yeah, it's a mess on both
it's in
sides.
some ways it's very, just be cautious,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's like, so they have like these walls built up, but the wall starts small because she still wants to meet somebody. She still wants to find a potential, person that can be in her child's life. I mean, really, she does. But then let's say guy one doesn't work out. Now that wall has created one layer. Guy two don't work out. That just gave her another layer. By the time she got to guy four, guy five, she has an entire defense armor. She is not having it, right? That makes it very hard for any man at that point to try his hand. It makes it very hard for her to feel comfortable enough or vulnerable enough to let her walls down or to let a layer down. But she's not going to let her entire wall down, right? But she needs to get to a place where she feels comfortable enough where she can open up to this person. So you can get close to her, but because of all this stuff that's happened, of all whatever trauma she's experienced with this other person, and now she has a son, and guess what? He's seeing all this. Her son is an eyewitness to everything that she's experiencing. I mean, really. And and they're gonna get into some more points. I don't know if we're touching on the whole article point by point, but if we are, then I'll save some of what I'm gonna say for later.
Yeah.
Because it's a few points in it that I'll just say for
Yeah, I think I
but
think we we'll definitely be able to go into other points later on once we
yeah.
go through the rest of the examples. But I'll go ahead and read the next one. So the next example is teaching their sons to disrespect male authority and male authority figures. And I think this is a very juicy one, and I'll tell you why. But I'm gonna go read the rest of the details on it. When a mother teaches her son to have no respect for the authority of their fathers, it teaches them that men are not to be respected. That can get him into trouble when he runs into male authority figures such as supervisors and police officers when he gets older. This is why many boys who come from single parent homes have a hard time adjusting to the real world. When challenged by male authority figures, they often resist them and disrespect them because they've been made to believe they're beneath them. What most boys from single parent homes don't understand are that these men they have little regard for have the power to fire him from a job. And if they're in law enforcement, these men who have the power to kill him if he doesn't follow their instructions to the letter. Okay, so let me share my take first. Okay,
I just think that somebody should have proofread this. That's all I want to say about
facts,
it.
facts, because I'm just saying like it grammatically
No, we
is
are editing as we go.
grammatically we gonna have to we gonna have
It's
to edit.
so grammatically
We're gonna have to
it's
edit as we
me.
go. You know what I'm saying? But here's my take on it. I think this is very true. Very true. More true than what any of us are willing to have a conversation about. Why? Because in most cases, when it comes down to the world at large, you know, not excluding the examples of, to give an example, you know, female police officers, you know what I'm saying, and women who are in high places when it comes down to positions of power, let's just say in different companies, so on and so forth. Not excluding those. However, what is commonplace is to see male authority figures, you know, in whatever example we end up seeing them. One highlight I will bring up is the aspect of police officers, you know, where this take highlights the detail of how, in the scope of emotionalism and in the scope of disrespecting, you know, the father or disrespecting men as a whole, how that take a son will internalize that as well. My mom's doing it, so I can do it too. When in actuality, what the mother doesn't understand is you as the mother have a certain privilege in this world in reference to doing that. No one bats an eye. But if he does that in the wrong situation, he could potentially lose his life because you have not taught him how to be able to, one, control his emotions as a man, which in my personal opinion, I don't believe a woman can fully teach her son how to do that. He must learn that from a man. Okay? Two, if he's in a situation where now he thinks he's above the law, hopefully he can get out of that situation with his life intact. And there is no situation where the mother is crying on, daytime news in reference to losing her son to, either police brutality or, police officers taking her son's life at whatever age, you know. But what you think?
I get the thing about respect, and I get it because I have a family that I have a good friend of mine who's in prison, right? And one of the things that he mentioned to me was that he said, and I saw this on a video on YouTube or something like that, where they went into, I think, a local news station went into this prison or whatever, and they were saying that they were trying to figure out if they wanted to terminate the box. And those who don't know what the box is, it's the hole, right? But now they call it the box. So it's a place where you would go if you are being disruptive, if you are inciting a riot
Solitary
within the prison.
confinement. Solitary
Right,
confinement.
solitary confinement.
Yeah.
So they call it the hold, they call it the box, but it is solitary confinement.
Hmm.
They're thinking about getting rid of solitary confinement for um, the group for the age groups. I think between like 18 and like 25 or something like that. The prison guards And a lot of the older prisoners are saying, no, that's not a good idea. Because when they come in, and here's what both sides are saying. This is something that both sides are saying, that the authority figures are saying, and that the older inmates are saying. And not older in terms of age, y'all, because you can be locked up, okay, at like 14, and then if you've been in there for a while, then that makes you seasoned, right?
Older when it comes down to
So,
tenure, the amount of time you've been in.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, they're all saying that's, hey, that's not a good idea, because when they come in, they need to be contained because they are out of control. And a lot of the prison guards are saying that it was a woman prison guard, and we can talk about that later because I got feelings about them. But there's a woman prison guard who said, "Well, we're in fear of our lives because they don't, because they will do anything to us, and we can't do anything." And some of the prisons, what they're saying, that they're not even allowed to, in some states, to carry guns in the back. Now they have guns, but they can't carry them. So they said that in some situations they have to go into it with like a flashlight, or like I think it's a nightstick or something equivalent to it.
Mm.
Some of them have mace, right, and some of them have, other things, but they don't have anything to use deadly force on, right?
Yeah.
The inmates is what I was really interested in hearing about. And this is something that my friend told me also. He said he's having a hard time. He's been locked up a very long time, and we've been friends for a very long time. And I asked him, I said, one of the questions that I asked him, I said, why do you keep getting in trouble? Right? I said, aren't you ready to come home? Aren't you ready to, and he's actually close to coming home, but he's been incarcerated for over 20 years. So we're not talking about a spring chicken. We're not talking about somebody who just went in. He said the issue is that once he does well, he'll go 2 or 3 years with good behavior, right? He's fine. He said, but when the new guys come in around the same age group that the video was talking about, he said they have no respect. That's what he said. He said they have no respect. And he said, and so I said to him, I said, well, why don't you ignore them? Right? Now this is coming from a woman who's never been in prison, right? So of course that doesn't make any sense. So his response was like, he said to me, he said, I can't do that in here. He said, because if you ignore it, they think, it's okay, it's acceptable. He said it's not acceptable. And where he is, and the same thing with the video said, is the older inmates were basically saying the same thing. They said they have no respect. So when they come in, they feel as though they have whatever authority or whatever over people who've been there for a longer time. And not only that, I found this interesting. He said they don't know what their time is going to be like. He said they're just, they're probably going through court. They're waiting for time. They could stay for the rest of their lives, or they could get released tomorrow. He said, but I've been here, and I'm going to stay here until I'm released. So you got to think about it that way. That if you come in with no, if you, he basically told me that if he's approached to somebody with no respect, in some instances there, he doesn't even give a warning. Because he said, warnings, he said, no. He said, I don't give a warning. He said, because they need to learn to respect me from the jump. He said, I don't mess with anybody. I don't, I have a certain, group, a few people that he conversed with, not that he called friends, but that he interacts with. And he said, but if you don't show him any respect, and by respect, I think he means that, he gave me an example, was he was watching the TV and somebody had turned off the TV. He was watching the Kentucky Derby. And he said that one of the new guys came in and he took the remote and he turned the TV to something totally different. And he said that's what started an altercation. But he said he encountered him again. And he said it was a different type of interaction. And so he said, that's why I don't give a warning. So to this point in this article, I believe that respect goes a long way. And even though we're not incarcerated, for those of us who are out here living the free life, whatever you want to call it, even in the workplace, in the workplace, respect also goes a long way. But in terms of like men, I think that when women, especially single mothers, when they're teaching their, when they are being disrespectful to men and to male authorities, I agree with the fact that women are born or do have this privilege, right? And I'm not denying that because I know in some instances it makes sense for me to say certain things and the police officer will take it or will react a different way than if my boyfriend was to say something or if my brother was to say something. It's a different reaction, right? Matter of fact, I was in a car one time and we got pulled over. I was on a date, y'all, first date, and we got pulled over for his tags being expired. Okay. What ended up happening was the police officer, and this police officer was an African American male, and he was a real dick. He was just really mean. And so he was talking to both of us, and when he said, this is what he said. He said, I would have pulled you. No, he said, I would take you in right now. He said, I would arrest you if it had not been for her. And I didn't say nothing. I was just there quiet. But I think even in my quietness and my calmness, where he was kind of, he wasn't being aggressive with this police officer. It was more of like I knew that I had, I guess, more power, I guess, if you will, in that particular situation. I'm like, you need to like go into this with some ease, with some calm, because right now he has the authority to do whatever he wants to do right now. And it's nobody else around. It's just his word against yours. And so I agree with that statement. I agree that here's the thing. Here's why I'm kind of hesitant about it. I agree with it in the sense of I don't believe that women should show, or in some instances, black, not sorry, not black y'all, single mothers should. Um, I don't know how to put this because I feel like there are instances where you have to be a certain way in front of your children because if you are the only parent, they have to feel protected, right? So if she doesn't do certain things or say certain things, then the child probably won't feel protected. But I think it's a matter of time and place and word choice and how you approach things. But I don't think that you're in that moment mentally when it happens, right? And if the child takes on the same attitude that you're taking on with this male police officer or this male authority figure, then that's what he's sucking in. He's like, okay, she's doing it, so I can do that too. Wrong, because he's not gonna react to you the same way he's reacting to her. It's gonna be totally different. So I do agree with that.
One
I agree with that.
one thing one thing I'll say on this, and then we can move on to the next example. One thing I'll say on this is the dynamic of how learned behaviors can be a disaster when you end up finding out that that learned behavior that you learned is not for you. The privilege is not for you when you're interacting with modern society. You know, a situation where you find out the hard way that you acting that way, you don't have the privilege. You don't. And that's how, in most cases, the world we live in today is being ran. It's being ran on privileges and double standards. Privileges
Yeah.
and double standards. Where you have a lot of people who understand the double standards that exist. You have a lot of people who will definitely use their privilege because everyone has privilege. Everyone does. It's to what level, to what degree, or to what concept. They have that privilege. You know, where the dynamic of understanding In most cases today, and I'm gonna go as far as saying this. In most cases today, for a woman that wants to feel protected and she is a single mother and the father is not there for whatever circumstance, for her to feel protected, one way for her to do that is to be able to call the police. The police has also been a replacement for the father. You
But
know?
Kevin Samuels talked about that, honestly. He talked about it in the aspect of kind of what you're talking about is where when something happens with a woman, she can call for help, right? And usually when she calls for help, it's the police, it's the fire department, whatever, whoever it is that she's calling, she has that option to call for help. Usually, the help that comes is a man, whereas a man, it's not. It's not the same way.
We
So that's
don't
one of the points that I didn't agree with him on. I don't agree with everything Kevin Samuel said, y'all, but there are
we
some
already
points that he
know
does say that I agree.
we already know, like I don't agree with everything
Well,
that
some things, he did make sense on a lot of things,
right.
It was just I just wish his delivery was different. Honestly. And I think a lot
I
of women
mean, I'm gonna put it like this. I think, and
like,
I'm gonna
really,
just
really gonna be like that.
I'm gonna just say this. I'm gonna
Jesus
say this one thing. I'm gonna say this one thing in reference to the aspect of delivery because I was thinking about this, after we did one of the other episodes. I believe the reason why Kevin Samuels became so infamous, if I could say that, is a lot of people were purposefully making sure that they would clickbait, certain things that he would say within certain succession to women, more specifically black women, in reference to not making the effort to look at all of his videos from start to finish. Because oftentimes, when it came down to his videos, what they would do is they would take a clip of what he said, not understand things that were being said prior to that clip, or even understanding things that were being said after that clip. It was more just taking out or extracting a certain clip that would show him in a certain way or put him in a certain light as far as him conveying disrespect. When in most cases, if you look at majority of his videos in full, he was the one that was disrespected first. In addition to, these women would go on his platform talking to him as if, now since I'm on your platform, you're going to do what I say because I'm on your platform now, exuding that inherent privilege of believing because this is a black man, he inevitably should just listen to you and do what you say and demur to you. And that's not true when someone else has a platform and you're going on their platform to tell them what they're going to do with their platform and what they're going to say and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. Really? That's a setup for disaster. That's a setup for you being disrespected on someone else's platform that is not yours. These women would call in, and I'm not saying this to say that I'm on Kevin's side. No, I'm saying this to say we have to look in the details when it comes down to certain people in this world, specifically a good amount of the women that will call into his platform to more so benefit from the views he's gaining and try to paint him out as if he's a villain, when in most cases he was not simping for these women. He was telling these women exactly the truth. Now, at times it could be harsh, but also in turn, when it comes down to black community, oftentimes, especially within the scope of single mother households, and oftentimes us being forced within, based on governmental intervention, being forced within a forced matriarchy, most black men and black women are not used to black male or black men being in a position of authority, speaking on certain things that inevitably, one, you're holding black men accountable, but in addition, you're also holding black women accountable. But the biggest thing is, oftentimes, especially in a forced matriarchy, the one direction of the black woman holding the black man accountable exists and is more prominent, not the other way around. And most black women honestly believe that they can, putting it, in the scope of one particular thing that, Kevin would say all the time, um, deflection, shame, insults, guilt, and need to be right, which essentially is just self-righteousness. Oftentimes, those are used in the scope of reinforcing the privilege that the black woman has over the black man that will never be talked about in reference to black women baseline because of the fatherless homes that we have gone through for over 30 years. They have never, most black women have never been in a situation where they had to respect the authority of a black man outside of being paid monetarily. But that's another detail. That's another detail, you know? Nevertheless, you want to read the next one?
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next one. So the next one is
projecting anger.
yeah, projecting anger at the father onto the son. Okay, sorry, I had to think about that, y'all.
Okay.
It's not common for a single mother to go into an angry rant when their son does something wrong or makes a mistake when they disagree with her. Oftentimes, she's venting the way she feels about the child's father at the son. Statements like, "You're going to grow up to be just like your no good daddy." Hit boys like fists. Oftentimes, these emotionally abusive blows knock boys down for the count emotionally before they even get up to become men. Okay. These hostile and negative statements from a single mother can force boys to withdraw socially and erect emotional walls. These walls prevent these boys from connecting with others and forming healthy relationships when they get older.
Okay. Here's my thing. So, um, do you want to, give your take on this before I give my take? Because I, you know, already have my take on it in mind. But
Um, I think that projecting anger, being mad at the father, and I mean, I really think that this kind of piggybacks off of one and two, honestly. Because if you're projecting anger at the father onto the son, um, it's kind of yeah, it's kind of piggybacking off all of those two. Now, I don't like when the author uses the word hostile. I'm sorry. I feel like just thinking of what the definition of hostile means.
mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of like this terrible god awful environment. I don't know if it's maybe it is, and I don't know. It would be nice to have somebody in here who was raised in this environment so we can get their take on it. But I think that oh yeah, I think that I don't. No, give yours first. Give yours first, because I'm still because it's yo. I'm trying to get over the grammar.
Okay.
And then I'm thinking back and forth about a few things, so that's why I'm kind of just all over the place.
Okay, so here's one big thing that, clues to me when it comes down to this example, and I think, there's a good amount of truth in this example. One big thing is when you project anger onto the son because of, the father's behavior or what he has done or what he did not do, that you had this expectation that you thought he should have done and then he didn't do it, you know what happens is you are holding your child, your son, accountable for your father's or his father's behavior that he has no idea about. He doesn't understand, one, he doesn't even understand who his father is, let alone what his father has done negatively, or your perception of what you believe is negative that you're now, in essence, projecting onto the son, holding the son accountable for the father's behavior. You know, it's like, to give an example, it's like when you got let's just say you got a bag of rotten oranges. You know what I'm saying? You got a bag of rotten oranges, you know, you don't show, you know what I'm saying, you don't show the person that you want to give this bag of oranges to, and I wouldn't even know why you would give the bag of oranges to them. You don't show, you know, them that they're rotten. You know, when the bag is closed, you can't, you know, smell that they're rotten or anything. And then all of a sudden, you know, you see, you know, what's rotten in there. You look at it, you smell it, and then you close it up and then give it to another person, you know, thinking that, oh, they deserve, you know, eating this. And then all of a sudden, later on down the line, when they're not around you, they open up the bag and they're like, what is this? They don't even understand when the oranges became rotten. But you may understand, you know, the time frame as long as you've had those oranges and when they became rotten. But you never conveyed that to the other person. You know? Where it's just like, how can you hold me accountable for something that I didn't do? But now, because of perception, because, you know, I am half of this person, and you can't hold the person directly accountable because maybe, in a sense, when it comes down to your, you know, relationship or lack thereof with the, you know, son's father, you know, you've tried to do it in the way that you know how, and it just doesn't work. Or you've tried to project your anger onto the father in reference to said behavior that you disapproved of, and the father's, I guess, his sense of masculinity prevents you from him feeling what you feel. You know, where it now becomes a realm of revenge in reference to now, well, you don't know how to, you know, get the father to be able to understand how you feel, you know, how hurt you are. Now, you're just going to use the child as a means to get back at the father. And that is just wrong. You know, it's just wrong. Psychologically, it's wrong. Because even though that child is half of the father, that child is not the father exactly. You know? But that's one take I have on that. And then another take I have on it is the scope of the emotion.
I just don't. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, let me. I'm gonna just say this, and then you go ahead. But the emotional walls part. Another reason why you do have a good amount of men that are not able to express themselves emotionally and have a balance between emotions and logic, and they completely cut off their emotions when it comes down to certain things, or they direct their emotions in a negative way, which can be perceived as toxic masculinity, is because whoever raised them pushed them to shut them off or not exude them in a way that a man should in this world. You know, the way a man uses his emotions is not the same way a woman uses her emotions. You know, more often than not, the way a man ends up exuding emotions in a way that could be perceived as far as a woman exuding their emotions, that man is seen as destructive and no good for the society or environment that that man is in. But then the privilege is that woman who's exuding her emotions in the way that she feels she needs to, because let's be real about it, more often than not, women's emotions and the way they exude them is more acceptable in society than the way that men would exude their emotions that would be perceived, that would be perceived as the way a woman would. The reason for men that it's not acceptable for men because you have a good amount of women that would not take a man exuding emotions in a way a woman would. A woman wouldn't take that because they would see that man as weak. And they would not want to be with that man. Because most cases, a woman doesn't want to be with a version of herself. She wants to be with a man that does exude logic. Oftentimes, women won't share that because women oftentimes don't understand how men are emotional. Oftentimes, you have a lot of women who end up having a mindset of believing, well, the way I'm emotional is the same way a man should be emotional. Nope. Because if that's the case, you would be with a man who acts like you emotionally. And oftentimes, most women, heterosexual women who have an interest in men, oftentimes do not or will get away from men who are emotional like women. They won't take it. They won't take it. Let's be real about that.
No, I agree. And I'm laughing because it's just true. It's true. I think that that's the beauty of the balance between men and women. I I think it's a gift and a curse. And I say that because I think that men should be able to express himself emotionally in front of the woman he is with, without any judgment, without I feel like he should be able, he should feel comfortable to do that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there's somebody ringing my door. Just give me one
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, y'all.
All right. So it's difficult in this world because, and a lot of people will say, well, this is not the case. Where let's be real about it. Men and women are different. But what has happened is within modern society has pushed this narrative of not acknowledging the differences, biological differences, chemical differences between men and women, or for that matter, the chemical differences between males and females. You know, they don't want to acknowledge that, or they will push this narrative in saying, well, we're all the same. No, we're not. Because if we were all the same, you wouldn't have this natural tendency for men and women to argue on points that they see different. You wouldn't have this natural tendency for that to happen, where balance has to be created between the man and the woman, or the male and the female. To have balance, that comes with an effort to understand the biological differences. Where when those are not understood, it's within a flow of a narrative that, well, everybody is one and the same. And that's simply not true. And then when you push that narrative, you end up having situations where, you end up having situations where all of a sudden, ones who need to understand their side and be given an example of their side when it comes down to their gender, it pushes them to not understand it because the facilitator of them being exposed to that side pushes them to not be exposed to it. Case in point, the detail of the mother having an understanding that her son needs to be exposed to men who understand what it means to be a man in this world. And when they're not exposed to that, it now creates an imbalance in the child because the child, that son, doesn't know what it means to be a man. For that matter, especially if the mother has a sense of hatred and disrespect for men as a whole, let alone the father, Now it's going to put an imbalance in the son in reference to, well, what does it mean to be a man? Oh, well, if this is what my mom is saying that it means to be a man, then I don't want to be a man, let alone try to learn how to be one. You know? But what were you saying that?
Okay, sorry. Amazon had the wrong address. um, I was I was just gonna say, and I forgot where I left off. Um, before I ran downstairs. But oh, I was saying that men should be able to be themselves and express their emotions and with the person that they're with. But I was saying that I think it's a gift and a curse because um, women are already emotional, right? I don't think when we say that it's acceptable, I don't think it's as it should be as acceptable as it has been. I think it's been more so tolerated by some people
You saying
because I have seen women become so instead of because when women become emotional, right? I wouldn't even say that it's acceptable all the time, but I would say it's more acceptable than if a man was to become like emotional,
yeah.
right, with someone. But I think that's a part of the double standard also, right? But if we're talking about men um, and women being together and having the same emotional state, or men being able to actually, no, women being with a man who is comfortable enough to express his emotions in the same way that she expresses hers. For a lot of women, that is a turn off. It is kind of a thing where I just don't want that. I'm too much by myself. I don't want to deal with this. I mean, honestly, that's just kind of what it is. I used to date this guy who cried. I had never dated a guy who cried in my life. So me coming from um, men who did not cry to this man who was totally comfortable crying in front of me. Not one time, not two, but every time he felt like he wanted to shed a tear, he just did it. And he didn't really care how I felt about it. He cared more so about his feelings in that moment and how he wanted to express it, and that's how he did it. And how I took it was,
Turn off.
initially, I tried to make him feel better about it. But then as time went on, I was like, okay, I mean, are you gonna cry every time? You cry more than I do. It was too much. It was too much, ladies. I don't think it's too much, right? But here's the thing: I did not see him as a weak man. So I think some women will see that as, oh, he's weak, or oh, he's not, like a man's man because he cries, or or he whines, because there are men out there who whine, there are men out there who cry. Same thing that women do. There are men out there who do that, but I don't think it's fair that women look at those men and think that they are, any that they are not, you know, the ideal man for them. So they're
It's
not a manly man, or whatever,
it's hard.
or however you want to put that.
The
But
biggest, the
um,
biggest, the most difficult thing in modern society now, especially when it comes down to politically based groups and also political ideologies, or mindset as far as how the world is seen, what may have you. It is difficult now to say that men and women should understand the differences between men and women. You know,
and
it is
I think that that's a huge thing that's not happening right
that
now.
it's not happening right now, which is to our detriment. Because with not understanding that, we also are not giving ourselves the ability to understand the other side. You know,
Yeah.
you have a lot of women who don't take the initiative to understand men. you have a lot of men who don't take the initiative to understand women. You know,
Yeah.
even now, when it comes down to certain groups, the narrative is, well, all of us are one and the same, but just different. That is confusing. You know, that is
Yeah.
confusing. To where, in the scope of understanding how a man needs to exude his emotions compared to how a woman needs to exude her emotions, if that's not talked about, then it comes to a point where you have too much of everyone thinking about themselves versus thinking about others in the scope of balance. There's too much unbalanced conversation or unbalanced rhetoric where it now becomes, being real about it, putting this perspective, battle of the sexes. Well, you need to understand me. No, you need to understand me. Case in point, feminism, the manosphere. You know, the manosphere has, just recently, gotten more popularity and push, especially because of Kevin Samuels, but then you also have, other men who are within the manosphere that also continue to push that narrative. However, I believe both need to be understood, but it's about how to exude both within the scope of intent. When your intent is fucked up, it's just going to be a cycle of toxic behavior among all. And no one will understand one another. No one will have a listening ear. No one will be in a mindset of, realizing, okay, what I'm doing is messed up. What I'm doing is messed up. How can we balance each other out? How can we not have the intent of having hatred toward one another? How can I not be a misogynist? How can she not be a misandrist?
Yeah.
How we need to balance each other out and be there for one another. Because we all we got. Are we just going to continue to have the battle of the sexes and have ones who place themselves in position of power understand the benefit monetarily when it comes down to the battle of the sexes as far as just being at odds with one another? Or can we actually understand one another and be able to come together when it comes down to how modern society sees us individually and understand there's a balance within that and there should be complementarity within that? Oftentimes, no, because chaos is lucrative.
Yeah.
But let me go ahead. Let's continue on because we got to finish, try to, or at least attempt to finish this this article.
Well, there's a lot on here, so I mean, I don't even think that we're gonna finish everything today.
Yeah,
well, let's. Some of it is kind of piggybacking off of some of the others.
True. Let's
It's one that I really want to get to.
Which one?
It's the It's actually two. It's the next. It's the no. Never mind, because it's like the next three.
Okay.
It's the next three. Yeah. It's
Let me.
The next three, so we can. Let's just keep going.
Let me read the next one. So the next one is not allowing their father to see them. And this is a huge one. So
that's a humongous one.
Yeah.
That's
so
huge.
While things between a single mother and the child's father may have soured, the mother should never deny the father a right to see his child if he wants to see them. Contrary to the belief of most feminists and liberals, oh gosh, we got a conservative piece. Most and liberals, I'm gonna just say this: I can't stand the whole, Democrat versus Republican, liberal versus conservative, because it's just so convoluted. Because oftentimes, especially in the scope of Democrat, Republican, and also libertarians, or independent parties, they use conservative and liberal, or liberalism and conservative views as far as throwing that into political parties to make it all confusing, where You can have and I'm gonna get back to the example, but you can have a liberal Republican and a conservative Democrat, you know,
Okay.
but you can also have a liberal Democrat and a conservative Republican. Most cases, we understand that most Democrats are liberal and most Republicans are conservative. However, there's also difference because I believe most black people in the United States are conservative Democrats, you know, based on the idea of what being a conservative is, and going into details on that. But I'm not going to go too deep on that. Nevertheless, a woman cannot be a mother and a father to a boy. And this is, a lot of people will argue this. Nor can she raise a boy to become a man. Boys need that relationship with their father to gain a sense of themselves and to understand their masculinity and male identity. Without that relationship, they often grow up lost and confused about their identity as a man. Okay? When boys can't understand those questions that only a father can answer, they take cues from hyper masculine images in media or from ideas from their peers to fill in the empty space regarding what type of man they should become. And if this media isn't available, he starts taking cues from their mother regarding what type of man they should be. All right. So one big thing, and I'm gonna just speak on this because it's probably already said, is going to be said probably a little bit later on in detail. But one big thing, and I'm gonna just say when it comes down to this, it is very damaging for a mother to psychologically push their son to fit a ideal version of what she thinks a man should be that she would not marry. Let me say that again, differently. You have often a good amount of single mothers. Good amount. Larger percentage than what we're willing to speak on. You have a good amount of single mothers that will have in their mind, based on the negative experience that they have had with men, not holding themselves accountable for the type of men that they have chosen. You have a good amount of them that will push their son to be this idea of what they think a man should be, that in most cases, most women out in modern society would end up friend zoning. Essentially teaching your son how to simp versus teaching your son how to be masculine, which you can't teach your son how to be masculine because you don't even understand what masculinity is, what true masculinity is as a woman. You may understand what femininity is, but you don't understand what true masculinity is because you're a woman. And then in most cases, if you've been scorned or have been soured by bad relationships, where you also don't hold yourself accountable or self-reflect to understand what part in that relationship went wrong because of you, then you will push your son to have this simping behavior toward women, when in most cases, most women, heterosexual women, are not attracted to that. They will friend zone your son immediately. What you got on this one?
I think it's wrong.
Oh, you think it's wrong?
I
Okay.
know. Yeah, I think it's wrong. I think personally, I know somebody who does this. Well, I know a few people. Well, I did because the kids are older now. So, but
Okay.
when they were younger, I had one girlfriend who who did this. Actually, she did a few of these.
Mm.
She talked bad about him in front of her kids. She did a lot of different things. Only difference is that she didn't have she had one boy and two daughters. So she was not, it wasn't just he was the only child. But and other difference that they, I think they all had different fathers. So it was not like she was talking about one man in particular. She was always talking about all of them. I was like, okay, somebody got to draw the line. Somewhere the line has got to be drawn. I don't think, of course, there's always an exception to this in my book, unless you feel like your child is going to be unsafe with him, right? Unless you feel like he's going to cause, and it's not your child, y'all. It's both of you guys' child. I mean, that child has a mother and a father. So I know that the mother does have like a special attachment to the child, but that is not just hers alone. She shares a responsibility with the father. And I don't feel like it's right if he doesn't have access to his child when he wants access, right? I don't feel like he should be denied, uh, you know, visiting privileges or whatever you. And my thing is, I feel like why should I have brothers who went through some of this, so I'm kind of like, I'm kind of like I saw the side where they were good dads and they dealt with these women and they wanted to see their kids and it just didn't work out because the courts or whatever the powers that be were on the mother's side.
The
So they
courts
had to go through the
are
whole thing of,
tremendously,
you know,
tremendously, and statistically, you know, 90% of the time in favor of women.
yeah,
That's just a fact. You can look up the
yeah,
statistics on this, where that benefit, like to give an example, um, one conversation I was having with somebody in reference to being able to determine paternity once a child is born. You know, implementing that as far as it being a standard across the board when it comes down to paternity once that child is born. Now, it's not a mandate, but still fathers can do that. They can ask for a paternity test to be able to see once a child is born if they want to. However, for it to be mandated, you have a lot of women that do not want that to happen because it would now open up Pandora's box in reference to, okay, is that child actually belongs to the father that you're claiming? You know?
yeah.
However,
I mean, you got
not,
some, you got some guys out there who are taking care of kids that's not theirs and they don't even know.
they don't even know. However,
They don't know.
that the imbalance of family court in the United States has gone for so long that you have a lot of women that would immediately push the narrative that that should never happen because of the narrative believing that all men are no good in the first place, you know,
Yeah.
and push that narrative more so. Where just talking about the family court system, specifically when it comes down to the imbalance, just giving him one example. However, this whole aspect of when you deliberately use the court system to make sure the father doesn't see said son, when you deliberately do that, that's psychological warfare. That's psychological warfare. You are using manipulation, you're using your privilege as a means to try to get back at this man who is the father, but you're actually doing more psychological damage to your son, not even knowing it. You're doing it through the scope of revenge. You know?
Yeah.
But
And
okay,
you're denying them to have that relationship that they should have by themselves. Mhm. And I
you
think that's a big key to like
the
their future, how they will interact
the man,
with other people as they grow.
the
Go ahead, go ahead. I'm
manipulation
sorry.
the manipulation creates a block in the son's mind to not be able to understand the paradox of choice in them wanting to have that relationship and the need for them to have it. When you create that block, that psychological block, you are yourself as the mother creating essentially trauma in their mind to push them to never have that relationship.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go ahead and read the next one so we can kind of get to it. Yeah, bringing oh man, and this is one of yeah, bringing in substitutes for a father, and this is a huge thing. Like this is many single mothers have alienated the child's father and are overwhelmed, try to or over or, golly, this the grammar in this is just it's garbage. Nevertheless, it's garbage. It's flat out garbage. Are overwhelmingly trying to bring in a substitute male to role model for him. Mind you, I've been, and I'm gonna keep it a buck. I'm gonna keep it a buck, and I'm just put this out here. I've been on both sides. I've been on the side of being the child. When it comes down to my mother doing this at one time, in addition to being a man that dated a woman who had a child. So I've been on both sides on this, and I definitely understand this is true. Unfortunately, this man often never measures up or is capable of doing the job of the child's father. I'm also speak on a particular experience that I had. Oftentimes he winds up just as overwhelmed and frustrated as the single mother is because he has no understanding of the family's history or the previous history of the child. What most single mothers don't understand is that only a father can meet the needs of his son. Only he can meet the emotional needs of that boy, and because half of that boy is based on who he is, and because he has some understanding of who the mother is. Here's the thing. True story. So, situation where I was dating a single mother, right? I was dating a single mother. We were together for a certain period of time. I understood that during her son's teen life or majority of his life, he has never seen his biological father. Guess what I did? I decided to want to develop a relationship, develop a relationship with the father himself. In addition to facilitating both of them going on a trip to go and see the father, which I did. I purchased tickets for both of them, the mother and the father, to go and see the father and the father's family. Okay? I'm going to put it like this. The mother was complaining the whole time in reference to certain things that she didn't believe her son should have been exposed to. When it came down to the son was just trying to understand who he's around because he's never been around that side of his family. Where my whole thing is, and kind of in a selfish perspective, but then still trying to be selfless. You as a mom are complaining about a side that you never took the initiative to understand yourself, and now you're trying to force that narrative onto the son because you're confused. Sorry, you don't get that privilege. The son just needs to understand. In addition to the fact that me, in the scope of trying to understand who the father is, hey, it is what it is. You had another kielbasa in you. You know what I'm saying? That's a fact because the son exists. I'm not concerned about, you having another kielbasa in you. I'm concerned about what relationship your son has developed or is trying to or needs to develop when it comes down to the father so he understands his other side. In addition to that side of his family, which is half of himself. That's my concern. Your concern is more so trying to not have your son interact with a side that you don't understand when it comes down to the father, in addition to not understanding culturally, where he's more so been around you. So you're going to be biased. You're going to be biased because you feel like he only needs that side. Sorry, that is not true. In addition to the fact that at first, when I ended up talking about, him going to see his father, him going to see his grandmother, which is he's never seen his grandmother on his father's side. All these details that I'm finding out from the father directly because I was the one that reached out and then made the suggestion for him and her to go down there, experience that culture. She at first wasn't having it. In addition to the fact that she ended up mentioning it out of the blue, and her son, said, "Oh, I want to go." And that's when she agreed, because he heard a conversation we were having about it, and then that's when he stepped in on the conversation and was like, "Oh, I want to go." I had the money. It was just about taking the trip, and they ended up staying with the family, where he was consistently around his other half. More so, the mother, the whole time, kept on reiterating how she didn't like being down there. And I'm sorry, I had to tell her. And this is where true masculinity comes in, to give an example of true masculinity. I told the mother, this is not about you. This is about him. This is not about me. This is about him. This has nothing to do with you. It is about him. Let him be in the moment. Because y'all only going to be down there for 3 weeks. It's about him. He needs to understand his other side. Be it understanding it from an extended portion when it comes down to being able to, be around them for a certain period of time, or if he decides he wants to genuinely have a relationship with his father and then be able to go further, he can do that. The exposure needs to happen. Because if you continue to push the narrative of him not needing to know that side, there are certain things that you may not understand in the scope of his behavior, that he has no context on why he acts a certain way, because he doesn't understand his other side of the family. It turned into a big argument. Eventually, it stopped being an argument because eventually he wanted to see his side of the family. And my whole thing is, and this goes to another detail. You're willing to listen to your son when he agrees with me, but you're not willing to listen to the logic in reference to me understanding the need for him to do that, because it's easier for you to completely dismiss true masculinity, let alone the logic in reference to him understanding his other side, without even getting his agreement on it. Which let me further know I didn't need to be with that woman. I didn't need to be with her. Because it's easy for you to shut me out in reference to looking out for the better interests of your son. But then once he agrees with it, when he ends up eavesdropping on a conversation we have, it now becomes good. No. That means you more so will listen to your son than what you would listen to me, especially if I'm more so being selfless.
I could have told you that. And I hate to laugh, but I'm serious. And that's a conversation for a whole nother one. But when it comes to, I think, and I think I know what situation you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I think that that was one of the concerns that you and I never talked about. But it was a concern that I just kind of kept to myself, and I wanted to see, like what happened, because I remember meeting you guys, I think,
Yeah,
and
you did. You did. Yes. Mm-hmm.
and everything was okay, but that was one of my concerns, was that she was a single mother, and I know, just from seeing my brothers again, I had brothers, so they would date women that had kids already,
Yeah.
and so it was just different. It was just different. I mean, even within, like my family now, it's like I have aunts that have kids, and I have uncles that, even though their sisters, even though their sisters have kids, they're brothers and sisters, but sometimes they don't understand. And I know this can be hard for the outsider. I hate to say outsider, but to the single mother, when it comes to her and her child, you are an outsider. I hate to say that, but I have seen it with my own eyes. But I think, at least, and I could be wrong. I have no kids, y'all,
And
but
this
that's how I
is
see it. I see that I think they see
in
it that way. Like you're not gonna go
the
down. Yes.
psychological aspect of that pinpoints this one truth. This is one of the main reasons why, when it comes down to the single mother, as far as being low on the totem pole in reference to dating, let alone being of marriage material, why they're so low on the totem pole is because, one, most of them will not listen because they feel like since they have been scorned by another man, they don't feel the need to listen to a man, especially if the man is being selfless in his logical thinking. In addition to the fact that, be real about it, most men who want to date, they want to be with a woman who doesn't have children because they want to actually have children with that woman and go through the dynamics of them being able to come together in the scope of being able to build a family, not necessarily coming, from the outside, coming in and being treated as if potentially they're always going to be on the outside anyway. No, that's why sexual marketplace, speaking on it, that's why single mothers are low on the totem pole, because no man wants to go through that, in addition to the fact that essentially you as a man, you're taking care of another man's child. But then there's this narrative that's pushed that, oh, completely ignore the fact that I was with another man and be there for all of us, but privilege wise, you can never tell me what to do when it comes down to my child. That's okay. I will not date you. And mind you, I tried. I tried. You know, I've been through it. But it's very difficult to convince, at least in my experience, convince a single mother to listen to the logic of a man that's coming in reference to her relationship or her psychological attachment with her son that is not healthy. It is
So I
hard.
just, I'm just gonna go ahead.
It's hard as shit, especially when, as a man, true masculinity. As a man, one character trait is you have to think about everyone as a whole. Mind you, I was willing to, on my own, have a conversation with this man where I know the benefit of him being able to know who his father is. I understood that. But if the mother didn't, it's easier for her to just dismiss what I say. Because now it becomes, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't have to listen to you because for the longest I've been doing this on my own, which technically you really haven't been doing it on your own, because you end up having governmental funding when it comes down to take care of your son. Because when it comes down to modern society, the whole situation in reference to women feeling like they're doing legitimately every single thing on their own, real talk, does not exist. Because you get benefits when it comes down to being a single mother.
Some of them,
Some of majority, I'll say majority, not all, and not all around the world, but overwhelmingly majority. But you wanna read the next one?
um, coddling, coddling their son.
Yeah, that's the
Is
next
that
one.
what?
Yeah.
Okay. Single mothers are the biggest enablers of bad behavior in boys. When their sons do wrong and they make excuses for them. When they make mistakes in life, they blame others for doing wrong by their boy. And when they fail in life, they bail them out.
Mm.
Thanks to their coddling, their sons never grow up learning they have to take responsibility for their actions. Oftentimes, the sons of single mothers often grow up spoiled with a sense of entitlement and a belief that the world owes them something
Mm-hmm.
that makes them impossible adults to deal with.
Mm. Mm. What's your take on this?
I think that this is a big one. I definitely don't think it pertains to all single mothers. I think yeah, I don't think it pertains to all single mothers. But I think it is a big one. But I think it's more of that like I I think it's a thing of like mothers want to be able to protect their sons, right? And this is where I think that women and men think very differently, right? If you're a mom, and I think it's almost subconscious, because I think if you're a mom, you're not thinking, oh, I'm coddling, but in your mind, you're thinking, I need to protect him, I need to do what I need to do. But that's where, if there was a man, if his father was there, right, it would be totally different.
Yeah.
Where you'd have a chance to see how you should really handle that situation, right? I told my sister, I said, if I had a child, I'm not going to jail for nobody, not even my mother, right? And I'll play about it, I'm not. I'm with you. But if I did have a child, and I don't have a child, but if I had a child, let's say they did something, kids do crazy stuff all the time, right? Um, if they did do something, crazy or illegal and they got put in jail on a Friday, they're gonna stay there till Monday. I mean that. I really do mean that. Do I want them there till Monday? Absolutely not. Why? Because I'm their mother. But I have seen, I'm speaking from personal, I have seen a mother call me, call her other girlfriend to get the money to bail their child out of a situation that they got themselves into after they was told not to do something and they did it anyway. And this was a son, she had a son. And me and a couple of other girlfriends were like, two of us put up money and the other one was like, the other one was like, I'm not giving no money for that. And I was like, and she wanted to know why. And she said, because he knew what he was doing. Um, and I don't think that we should, that you should stress yourself out worrying about what's going to happen to him. He's safe. He's in prison. He can't go nowhere. He can't go nowhere till Monday. He'll be fine there all weekend. And but the thing is that I think that for her or for single mothers, it's like I think it's two things. And I know I'm about to get some flack from the single mothers out there for this, but I have heard women say who are mothers. Matter of fact, I've heard a girl say who was pregnant on the bus one time, "Oh, I'm having a boy," and then somebody on the bus congratulated her, and the other woman on the bus said, "Well, when they grow up, they want to protect you." And I thought that was an interesting comment, and so she was like, "Yeah, you're right." I think for single mothers who have sons, I think it's like I need to protect them from whatever it is that they can get into. I need to bail them out. I need to do this. I need to do that to make sure that they're safe. In reality, your child, your son is gonna do honestly whatever he wants to do, and you can't save him out of everything. And as far as protection, you're not really protecting him. You are coddling him. You're letting him know that when he does something wrong, um, mom is going to be there to kind of get me out of the situation. It's bad right now, but I can always call home, and she's going to make sure that that I'm not stuck in it for too long. I may have to sit for for a little bit, but I'm not going to be stuck in it. And I think that a lot of on the other side of it, I think that some women think like I've heard women say, "Oh, my son, he protects me." Like your son is not there. I mean, I'm not saying that these single mothers with these boys are, I'm not saying that the son should not protect his mother. Absolutely, right? That's your mom. But I don't feel like it's fair to him to feel like he needs to protect you when something goes wrong. I feel like that's why you have a husband or a boyfriend or something like that in your life. If you feel like you need protection, you can't put that huge responsibility on your son. Your son has to grow up and become a man and know what that is, and he has to eventually meet women and start his family. That's then his priority. It's not you are not, you understand what I'm saying? So
This
that's how I
goes.
kind of
Let me put it. I understand exactly what you're saying. This goes back to the perspective of what you did not get from the child's father. You're now trying to place the responsibility on the son to give you that because you didn't get it from the child's father, which essentially you're trying to now make the perfect man that in most cases women will not deal with, let alone will friend zone.
yeah.
Okay? In addition to this, when it comes down to this whole coddling shit, because
Yeah.
this is a huge thing.
No, this is a
And
huge thing. Women
I'm gonna give you an
co-parent,
equation.
even college students. You got parents who are paying for. I was overhearing a conversation at work. You have got parents out here paying for when there is student housing available. When the school offers room and board, you have got parents out here paying extra for apartments off campus, for new cars. These are grown kids, y'all. These are not like little babies. These are we're talking about boys who are now
But
men, like they're
the
over
biggest the biggest
19
thing, you have a
years.
lot of parents who, you know, are not teaching a sense of responsibility when it comes down to young men and young women. They're not teaching a sense of
Yeah.
responsibility where essentially when it comes down to that, they end up vicariously living through their children in the scope of wanting their children to be what they did not become, or to be exactly what they are, when you shouldn't do either one to your children. But that's another dynamic. Going back to the college shit, here's a big thing that I'm gonna say this in reference to, the relationship between the mother and the son. Nurturing minus a fatherly presence or a surrogate father presence equals coddling. Okay? Nurturing minus a fatherly presence equals coddling. And the reason why I say that is because you're going to coddle your son in the scope of what emotionally benefits you. If the father was there, you could be able to nurture your son in reference to the father's, and I'm going to put this out there, and I don't give a fuck what anybody says, in reference to the father's leadership in understanding the balance when it comes down to the family dynamic, being that leader. Okay? Because a lot of this, this modern society says, well, no one should be the leader in the home. Then no decisions would be fucking made. There would not be a final decision on anything if that was the case. Okay? Here's the thing.
There's
When
got
you
to be a leader. There's got to be a leader.
when you coddle your son, when you do that, you in essence are pushing them to try to be within the dynamic of the privilege that you have, that they will eventually find out that they don't. There are certain behaviors that a man is going to get in trouble for, that can get killed for, that women will not. Facts. And you don't get that. Where when the father is in your presence and understands he needs to be disciplined for the bullshit that he tried to pull. And then certain levels of discipline are implemented, and also certain levels of talking things out in reference to why child was disciplined is also implemented. So the child can understand, I shouldn't do this because this may happen in the future if I try to do this again.
Yeah.
And then once child is disciplined, that's when the mother comes in with the nurturing to not go against the father's leadership and discipline, but to be able to build the son back up in reference to reinforcing what the father is already doing when it comes down to conveying to the son that the son still has value, but they just fucked up. You use nurturing to reinforce value. You don't coddle to reinforce what you are emotionally getting when it comes down to trying to push your son to be the husband that you don't have. It's all psychological at the end of the day. Why am I so passionate about this? Because it's a thing. It's a thing. You know? Do you want to do one more or should we cut it?
Let's cut it only because it's pushing 5 and I want to get to the park, y'all.
Okay.
Take my girl
Yeah.
to the park.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that we should continue. I mean, it's a lot of good stuff.
We should do a part. We should do a part 2 to this. We should definitely do a part.
This is going to be like 5 parts. Maybe next time we could just read, like skim them, like go through all. I mean, because it's a lot of it is piggybacking. Like there's one on here on smothering.
Yeah.
I think that kind of ties into coddling.
Yeah. We could, you know, we could do a part 2. We'll do the part 2, but we'll skim through each one in reference to like at certain details, but not, you know, literally read in depth, you know. But we would have to, you know, just go ahead and you know, prepare for it. But yeah, I mean, when it comes down to this, it's because, you know, and I'm gonna be real about it. Most of the comments when it comes down to this article is most people using the sign language. You know, of course, the sign language. Well, sign language is a coin term that Kevin Samuels has used, where I use the sign language where I just add the D because a lot of people think I'm saying the when I say duh, but I'm just, you know, phonetically saying the D when it comes down to, you know, adding the D for deflection, you know, deflecting, where the sign language is deflecting, shame, insults, guilt, and need to be right, which essentially is self-righteousness. You know, often those are used in reference to not acknowledging the specific side, which is something that I brought up in the beginning of this episode, the specific side that this is talking from. It's easy to deflect, but not go into the details of the validity of the content that it speaks on here, you know, where there are certain things in reference to grammar, certain things in reference to words where I don't agree with using the word mangina. I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
But I'll speak to that, but then also go into the truth of what is being said when it comes down to the overall message of this article and the points that it's making.
Yeah.
You know, but anything else you got before we cut it?
No. I think that this was awesome. I think it's a lot of good points in here. And if you haven't read this article, I think you definitely should, especially single mothers. Maybe an eye-opening experience for some of y'all. And for those who are not mothers yet, maybe those of us who are aspiring mothers, parents, whatever. So
I'm gonna just say this last point, and then we'll go. The last point I'll say when it comes down to this, a lot of people drag this article, you know, dragged it, and not understand the details when it comes out of this. Oftentimes, those people that will drag this article more so are thinking in a perspective of how they are able to see the world and how they're able to see life. And oftentimes, you have to take yourself out of the situation and place yourself into another perspective to be able to see something from a certain viewpoint. You know, to give an example, I don't know what it means to be a woman. I don't know what it means to be female. So I have to talk to women to understand what that is about and be able to gain some sense of sympathy in reference to, women living within their skin, females living within their skin. I have to try to understand that. But in addition to that, I balance it out in reference to how I'm living my life too. And that creates a conversation, a objective conversation in reference to understanding one another. Okay? In addition to that, it's easy to take the path of least resistance. It's easy to blame, shame, insult, guilt trip, always reiterate a point that you feel like you have a sense of entitlement of you should be the only one to listen to. When we have had governmental intervention in the United States when it comes down to the black community as far as black Americans, black American men, and black American women, it reinforces that forced matriarchy in reference to you have a good amount of black women, and I'm going to say it, a good amount of black women that are not willing to listen to black men. They don't feel the need that they should because of the entitlement. Not saying it's all, good amount though, because of the entitlement of growing up in a family dynamic where more so you listen to your matriarchs, grandma, mom, aunties, and those were the ones that were more so around you, where you listen to them in the scope of just doing for yourself, which reinforces dynamic of not understanding another side, which continues the dynamic of fatherless homes too, as far as looking at one side of the coin.
Yeah.
Do not deflect in reference to reinforcing what men are doing wrong. No, listen to the side first, because that's what this article is specifically talking about. And then we can also have another conversation in reference to what men are fucking up in our community. Both sides are equally important to have an objective conversation. Equally. Stop deflecting. And I say that out of love. With that said, Real Raw Exchange Podcast, another episode down. Y'all take it easy. Have a wonderful week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.